Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Comedian MTG. My name is Ian, and back to back, a week in a row, we have another deck tech for you. Today, I have not only patron, but one of the most frequent members of the Comedian MTG Discord and our resident ad nauseum addict, taking lines of ad nause day after day. We have Dragoon here. Dragoon, say hey.
Hey, how's it going?
To be clear, this was not my joke, and I stole it right away.
I gave him.
Yeah, feed me the good lines right before the show. Today we have a super spicy deck, and I'm kind of excited to jump right to it. So I'm gonna leave my fun little image of Lurrus I have on the back screen here. But before we do that, before we jump into the deck officially, I'd love to say, if you like content like this, feel like these awesome deck techs here on the channel, please feel free to like and subscribe. It helps out the channel a ton. And if you want to be super generous or even want to have a deck tech on the channel, much like Dragoon here, feel free to go over to patreon.com/comedianmtg, and any help is super appreciated. It helps keep things going and growing, as I like to say. All right, let's jump over to...
Oops.
I turned my camera off.
You can put it in the bloopers.
Oh, yeah. I'm keeping it in, Fuck it. Let's go over to Dragoon's list here. Baby Blue Farm, which, I was talking with Gustav the other day, trying to name his version of the list, or his variant of this list. And I was like trying to come up with a good name for what he was working with, and I was like, "Damn, Baby Blue Farm's just a real good name. Like, I'm a real fan of that name."
Thank you.
It's so clean, and it explains exactly what's happening. But so let's talk about this, right? So this is a Stranger Things list. We have Lucas the Sharpshooter and Will the Wise, who at some point will not be Lucas the Sharpshooter and Will the Wise, and they'll have a different printing. So we have Lucas and Will. But like the real reason we're playing this deck, right, is because you get 4 colors and you get to have Lurrus as your companion.
Lurrus is the main driving point of having this deck.
Yeah,
honestly,
for sure. So the reason why this commander pair is so interesting, and the reason why we're picking these two, is because until now, you couldn't have this 4-color combination and have Lurrus as a companion, right?
Yeah, so for the longest time, it's always been Timna, Crom, or Brea as our sunscreen,
right?
Turbo, whatever ad nause list that you want to do,
right?
And you can never, and the only way that you'll ever be able to play Lurrus is if you played in your 99 or 98 in the Crom Timna pairing,
right?
In this case, and Lurrus is an amazing card.
Yeah. For sure.
There's only like very few counters to it in terms of like shuts it down completely in its basically Dreadeth Magistrate and like the occasional Grave Hate depending on
so like Rest in Peace, Graftdiggers, all that nonsense,
yeah, and then but the only way that you'll be able to play as a companion is if both your commanders are 2 CMC or less,
right?
And also every permanent that you play, including your land.
Right. So if you'll notice, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. Down the enchantments, there's no Rhystic Study, and that's because of the constriction of Lurrus, right? Because it's a permanent that costs 3 or more. However, you can play cards like Windfall and Peer into the Abyss because they're not permanents, right? They're spells. So I just wanted to make that distinction for everyone listening.
And honestly, like the only cards that I actually miss playing this deck is Rhystic Study.
Yep.
And Spellseeker. And the occasional Ranger Captain of Eos as well.
Yeah, for sure.
But the payoff that you get from playing a Turbo Null strategy, but also have a recursion engine in your command zone.
Yeah, the companion zone,
you get from Lurrus.
Yeah.
As your backup plan, because it's not your main game plan; it's your backup plan.
Right.
So you would go like, and plus like you can actually recur back your Underworld Breach with your Lurrus, which is actually really sick.
Yeah, that was the selling point when you and Gustav were sort of trying to explain why you guys were going so hard into the paint with this one. When you described it as, well, in the companion zone, you can get something that just buys back your breach if you can't win. I was like, oh, Okay, now this is worth talking about. And then you start looking at
Yes.
other cards, right? Like, so Thassa's Oracle, you can get back, and Dockside, you can get back after you sack it to something. And there's a
Yeah, like
lot
calling the
of,
weak,
yeah,
diabolic intent. You can actually,
yeah.
you can, and also you can also even bring back your Mystic Remora.
Oh,
So you don't,
shit.
so you don't
That's
always have to,
sweet.
so you don't always have to like keep paying
Yeah, that adds
its
up.
upkeep cost.
Now I gotta ask, how many times has the fact that the companion errata happened? Has that been like a big effect on the list? Like the fact that Lurrus costs basically 6 mana broken up into 2 turns?
So it's a hit or miss depending on depending on the pod composition that you're playing in.
Right.
It really depends. So like you can go into like a Staxy pod or like a just grinding mid range pod.
Yeah.
Hit your land drops, cast Lurrus,
Yeah.
and then grab a Lurrus, cast it,
Yeah.
and just recur advantage because like that's why we also play cards like Soul Guide Lantern and
Yeah.
and then just having like other recursive and also like having recursive creatures too.
Yeah.
In the form of that, Malevolent Hermit is another big draw to this deck because it's actually insane.
Yeah, the fact that it's just like a repeatable counter spell, so you just kind of always have one is pretty crazy.
And you don't even have to do the disturb cost for it because it's just
Although that doesn't hurt. That disturb cost is insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and also sometimes your opponent would abrupt kill your Grand Abolisher and you just bring it right back.
So that's what I was gonna say. Like the Grand Abolisher is one of those cards that, like, if you make it stick, it's absolutely insane. And the fact that this deck makes it such a sticky threat over and over again, that's such a boon. Like, that's so cool.
There's a lot of cards that you can. There's a lot of permanents that you can just say like, oh, why is this always sticking to the board?
Yeah.
It's like because Lurrus and also there's not much grave hate.
Yeah.
The only repeatable grave hate card that you actually like see these days are Draneth Magistrate, and like that's probably it. Like you will
people sleep on grave hate. Yeah, for sure.
Like you'll see the occasional Rest in Peace, the occasional Grafter's Cage, but it's not as prominent as Draneth though.
Right. So we talked about Lurrus. Do Lucas and Will provide any sort of like actual advantage in the command zone, or are you really just playing Lurrus?
Since we also play Mox Amber, they will come up occasionally.
Okay, sure.
But they're also aggressive bodies that you can just cast out of nowhere,
and it helps with guardianship and deflecting
deflecting SWAT, and also like depending on the circumstance, like I think it's Will that can also ping people.
That's Lucas,
right?
Yeah.
That's Lucas.
Yeah.
Lucas, he can ping people depending on if you're also playing Dramatic Reversal and Ice Conceptor, which is something that I forgo in this list.
Yeah.
But I have in my budget list. I have different versions of the list for the Budget Brews corner.
That's cool. Nice.
For 1,000 and 750.
Which is awesome, and I'll definitely I'll make sure to grab those off you because I'll put all those down in the description below. Yeah,
because and having cheap ways to win that's not going to break the bank.
Yeah,
you can actually kill the entire board with Lucas with Dramatic Reversal and Ice Cream Sector. Actually,
oh, cool. But he needs to be not summoning sick, right?
Yeah. And also, does he ping players or creatures too? Or just creatures?
1 damage to target creature.
Oh, well, never mind. Never mind. Scratch that. But he can kill a bunch of mana dorks and a bunch of not planeswalkers because they actually can't be pinged.
Yeah. I thought there was something with but it's because you're recasting Will over and over again that your opponents are losing life, right? That's where that comes from.
Yeah,
right. Because then Will becomes the infinite draw outlet. To be clear, Will makes a clue whenever he enters or leaves, and
Will draws your deck, and that's why.
So if your opponents don't give you the extra clues, they die basically. So then you get to draw your deck.
As you can tell, people, we don't really cast them that often.
Yeah.
Unless we're just using them to sack each other.
Yeah, I've
or
noticed
like
a lot of the
are sacrifice specs.
conversations about these pairs have been mostly combinations of Will, 11, and Mike. And I've noticed that
Yeah,
like a lot of the Will conversations have been if you can find ways to make him keep coming back to the battlefield and leaving the battlefield, he's an infinite mana outlet, which is pretty cool. Like it's interesting to have a utility like that in a partner quote
yeah.
creature.
I think it's just like mostly like being able to like recur it back with Lurrus
Right.
dramatic reversal,
Yeah.
and I can't remember the exact combination of cards because like I
Hmm.
actually was talking to members of like the Turbonauts Discord when I'm like showing this list off, and people are like, "What are you doing? Just play Timna Crom."
Yeah,
I'm like,
for sure.
guys, there's a reason why we're playing Lurrus. It's good.
Yeah, and first of all, like people definitely like need to chill with that mentality because that's not how innovation happens. And two, I think this list has its strengths, right? Like Timna and Crom are very strong at card advantage engines. No one's arguing with
Yes,
that. However,
100%. I
having
love those cards to death, but
yeah, having 2 mana commanders in the command zone really help for the Turbonauts plan. So it just because they are there for your diabolic intents, they're there for your Mox Ambers, your Culling the Weeks, right? And so you
yes,
have those available pretty consistently, unlike Timna and Crom, which are 3 and 5 mana respectively, and you don't really care about sacrificing them, or you don't want to sacrifice them, and you get the companion in Lurrus. So it's like, and especially if you use Will as that sacrifice outlet, now you're suddenly having this cheap 2 mana threat. Turns on Deflecting Spot, turns on Guardianship, can then be sacrificed to get your stuff, can be cast again with Lurrus to have put your Fierce Guardianship, your Deflecting Spot back online. So like there's clearly many benefits of going this route. And it's a shame that people can be so dismissive about these things, for sure.
and also it also comes from the fact that people are also just like, why would I want to play non-Magic IP?
Yeah, which is
Commanders?
definitely a thing, and I got a lot of flack for playing Rick for a really long time
Yeah,
too.
it's like come on, guys! Like they're printing these cards so we can play with them. Like
Yeah.
it's not that bad.
Does it take a little bit to wrap your head around these things? For sure, right? Like it's definitely different. But different doesn't have to mean bad, right? And I think that's kind of the camp that you and I fall into, which is like it's different, but it's here now, so we're gonna use them, right? Like
Exactly.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I'm not gonna. I remember when the Stranger Things Secret Layer got spoiled. I was actually at work.
Yeah.
And I went on my break. I'm like jumping onto Discord, seeing what's going on.
Right.
And I'm like seeing all these people like just like hopping on, just like, guys, they just announced a new Secret Layer. So I'm like, wait, what? And I'm like, and everybody was like, yeah, man, we got new Lurrus commanders. I'm like, wait, what we do? And I got super giddy, and I'm like, goose off. Let's build this list, guy,
Right,
man.
right.
And he's like, oh wait, and he's like, sorry, dog, I already
built
it. Already built it with Phoenix. I'm
Yeah.
like, no, like, wow, jeez, thanks.
And so now we have the 2 comedian MTG Lurrus Companion list going on there between Phoenix and Gustav, and you got your own thing going on, which is dope.
Oh yeah, and shoot, like I already took my LGS. We're allowed to use I talked the store owner into letting us use the companions or the commanders already.
Yep.
And so I played a tournament with them, and I went undefeated with them in some hostile pods. Dang. I think I even showed you one of the pod compositions too.
Yeah, it was insane. And it was like super unhealthy for you.
And like some of them, I'm like the last pod, it was a pod of 3 stack decks, and I'm like, what am I doing in here?
Yeah, like what? How?
why am I in here? Please stop.
So back to it. We're at high level game plan, right? It's basically mini Blue Farm, right? Like hence the name, Baby Blue Farm, right? It's Blue Farm, but with a forced restriction on the mana cost and with the innate ability to get some really like cool and kind of cute, but not in like a derogatory cute kind of way, advantage with your commanders. Yeah, I say we just go by category here and kind of break stuff down. So creature wise, there's nothing sort of crazy going on, right? Like it's a sand green turbo deck, right? So you got your value 1-drops in Ragavan and Esper Sentinel. You got Dark Confidant, a fantastic draw engine. Dockside, great. Obviously, once again, beautiful with Lurrus. Beautiful synergy there. Gilded Drake too, if you can sack that and like get that back, that's awesome with Lurrus. We talked about the strength of Malevolent Hermit and how strong that is in this list. The fact that it's just like a non-creature mana leak over and over again that you can just keep getting back.
Also, I think I have Snapcaster Mage in the list too.
Mm-hmm, you do? Yep. Snappy.
And
Big
it is
Snappy
hilarious. It is hilarious to use Snapcaster Mage, recur it back with Lurrus.
Yeah.
And getting it to value again. And then, like, you can sack it to, like, Diabolic Intent, recast it again, and it's just like...
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
It's just like, please stop.
Yeah, for
like,
sure.
Please, like, somebody get rid of this Snapcaster Mage, please.
And then, obviously, you're playing Thoracle because you're on Thoracle console, as you should be.
Sadly, yes. I'd rather it be banned than I have Flash, but that's a whole nother can of worms. That's a whole nother can of worms that I will...
Yeah, we'll unpack that some other time.
Yeah.
The hot takes. I wasn't aware this was going to turn into a hot takes episode.
I've been in the playing with power Discord too long.
Yeah,
I've been seeing a lot of hot takes that I do not agree with it.
Gotcha.
They also see my hot takes.
So moving on to the sorceries, another sort of round of like the stuff you would basically expect. We got like Gamble, Get Probe, Impseo, Rite of Flame, Demonic Tutor, Diabolic Intent. Jessica's Will, which once again, another one of those payoffs I mentioned, just the fact that you have these 2-mana commanders, right? And that consistently
aggressively cause commanders that fuel your commander-centric cards.
Yes, exactly. Mnemonic Betrayal, which is a fantastic card. So the two I'm really curious about, obviously like PETA, once again, this is a blue farm list. But Wheel of Misfortune and Time Twister, I'd love to hear your thoughts on those respectively.
So Time Twister is so like both Wheel of Misfortune and Time Twister, like they are draw 7s that are from time to time can also backfire on you.
Right.
I actually have a very long consideration list underneath my main list.
Yep, and 67 cards right now.
A lot of them were from Gustav's and Phoenix's initial list because I actually took their list.
Just duplicated it and then
duplicated and made it my own. And
you said you're quite different from them now, right? You said like 18 cards.
18 cards from Phoenix's list, 17 cards from their primer list.
Gotcha.
Which is a very big difference. There's even like a separate land. There's like 2 different lands that I play that they don't.
Gotcha.
Like I play Hollow Fountain's Inspired Industry. But back to Misfortune and Time Twister, I flip flop between those 2 cards and Final Fortune and what was the other card? I think I even used Mishra's Bauble.
Oh, okay, sure.
Which is another artifact for Mox Opal. It is recurability with Lurrus.
Right, just like Modern.
I was to say, if you played Modern, then you've definitely seen the combination of those 2 cards in a lot of mid-range black decks.
Yeah.
But this, at some points, you do need a reset button with Time Twister, because you can't always look at you're not always going to be able to use your Underworld Breach.
Right.
It's a thing that is easy to disassemble very, very quickly.
Yeah, for sure.
So Time Twister there is very good. Wheel of Misfortune it's all right, but like I'm not always thrilled to be playing it, but like it gets the job done though.
Yeah, that's super fair. It's just one of those cards that and maybe it's me, it's like a gambling card, and I just feel like every time I play a card like this, it just backfires on me so bad. So I think it's left a bad taste in my mouth, personally.
I mean, we're also playing Gamble, so I think...
Gamble's one of those cards that I'm like, man, it's a 1-mana tutor, but I really hate it.
Paid off for you in the MLC finals. So.
Yeah, that is true. That's true. All right, let's move on to the instance. If you notice Sabine's rec here...
I think there's some fun ones in there.
Yeah, if you know Savine's Wreck down the sorceries, makes sense because we have the intuition package here. For those who aren't used to playing Sans Black strategies, that is, you go for an intuition, you'll grab some combination of Underworld Breach, Lion's Eye Diamond, and Savine's Reclamation, and then sometimes if you have one of the other pieces, you'll grab Brain Freeze as well, and basically you'll be able to make an impossible pile for your opponents. That's, basically a case of, okay, this one's slightly less bad and this one's slightly less bad, but it's all bad for us.
I've even gone down the rabbit hole of actually grabbing value intuition piles with because you have Lurrus in the command zone, you're able to grab Mishra's Bauble. You can grab a bunch of value pieces. I've even grabbed Dockside Extortionist, Grand Abolisher, and Malevolent Hermit. And I had a game, and one of the games that I had, I actually went for that file.
Yep.
My opponent only gave me Hermit, but neglected to realize that I can actually bring back creatures with Lurrus.
Right.
So I grabbed back my Dockside let me cast my Malevolent Hermit. And
seems good.
Everybody was like, "Oh, that escalated real quickly."
Yup. Yeah, it seems whenever you finally pass the Lurrus threshold, the deck really just pops off.
It pops off in the grind for the grind. Yes.
Yeah. Got some. Yeah. So some interesting pieces here. Obviously, you're playing Console Tainted Pact because you're playing that as a win con. Interested to see a Braid here. It makes a lot of sense. I like the flexible removal spells. I'm always going to be a big fan of those, especially because it hits Strandith, which is, as you mentioned, is kind of a pain in the butt for your deck.
Sometimes, but it's not always a pain in the butt.
It's not a game ruiner, but it definitely doesn't help when you're on the Breach, Lurrus, Mnemonic Trail, all that nonsense packages.
Yeah, and also it's hilarious that it deals 3 damage and also kills an artifact, so it can kill really bad artifacts. So hate pieces like Thorn of Amethyst, Trisphere,
right?
Which I've had people even play Chalice of the Void against me.
Yep, yeah, still a card I see play. Yeah, for sure.
And I just look at it, I'm like, you're not nice. He just dropped all of his 0-mana artifacts and he just casted a Chalice of the Void.
I've done that. Did that in Kenrith Pod quite a lot.
I ask people, I'm like, hey, does anyone got any anything to stop that? They're like, nope. And I'm like, oh, that hurt.
Woof. But yeah,
not fun.
So Rushing Rivers here, which is pretty interesting. I know that's one of those cards that has been debated so heavily in a lot of the turbo metas. What's your selling point on it?
So for a list like mine, my list is trying to end the game quicker than most turbo lists. And due to the fact that I cannot afford to wait for Cyclonic Rift Overload mana, Rushing River is a card that allows you to deal with 2 permanents instead of just 1.
Right, because you're not even playing Rift at this point.
No, I actually cut Rift for
River.
For River.
Interesting. I actually like that a lot.
Since my metagame is more turbo ad nos oriented,
right,
and just turbo combo decks in general, I'd rather deal with the singular pieces or the 1 to 2 pieces that I just need to deal with, and then just go off.
Just go for it, sure.
And just go for it.
Yeah, I can see that in a more clogged meta, how that might not be the
if
ability.
If I were to be playing in a open metagame, so Marchesa, Tier 1 Con, any of those kinds of metagames, I would be playing Cyclonic Rift just because I know the games are going to go long.
Right, makes sense. Makes perfect sense. Sweet, and that's
not so much Tier 1 Con because there's a lot of turbo.
Yeah, I was gonna say Tier 1's definitely the jam it and pray meta. So Spell Snare in your list. You and I were talking a little bit before the show about this one. I'd just love to hear your opinion on that one.
Oh, it's sweet. You can just counter Thassa's Oracle, Underworld Breach, Sylvan Library, counterbalance because like for some reason people are playing that card. I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, if only some content creator was a real douchebag about telling everybody to play that.
Then again, but I think that content creator also had like two guys.
Yeah, two people really telling him to hype that card up.
That
Yeah.
were just like, hey, you should play this card.
Yeah,
more.
for sure.
You can also stop the Chalice of the Void on one with it. You can stop Training Grounds, which is hilarious because like there's a fun little deck called Dawnwicker Thrasios that you just don't want them to have that. You can also counter Thrasios with it. You can counter like so many funny things with it. You can even counter Hermit Druid too.
Yeah, Hermit Druid is really strong.
And
yeah, like 1 mana counters that can hit Breach, in my opinion, are super necessary. Like it's very important. And any deck that I'm playing that is more reactive, I tend to play this card. But I just thought it was interesting to see it in this deck, which is much more proactive than reactive.
It's a thing that happens from time to time, and it's really good when it pops, when it's actually be able to be played.
Yeah, for sure. And you found that like bounce removal has been enough. You don't need something like a Swords to Plowshares to really sell it for here.
Source to Paul is just in the considering section.
Yeah.
If I'm in an open metagame, I will play
Gotcha.
Swords, and I will replace it with some other card, probably Mental Misstep, because that card's actually pretty bad. Hot take.
It's one of those cards where I've seen Mental Misstep be absolutely insane. I've seen it be useless, and like the difference between them is so subtle and yet so cavernous, you know. Like it's so easy for that card to be so bad, and it's so easy for it to be so good.
And also like a well-timed Source of Polishers can ruin like a lot of Razakat's players' days. And you're just like, sorry.
Down to the artifacts.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah, so let's talk about the spicy numbers, like the good ones here. This one's not really one of those, but like Grinding Station, I think once again, I've been sort of preaching this for a bit. I think it's just really good with Breach right now, and I think that it's underplayed in high color Breach decks. I think people for some reason are associating it with low color Breach decks, which have a really hard time of actually capitalizing on this card. I think it's really good in these high color Breach decks.
It's another card that I play in all versions of Baby Blue Farm.
Sweet. And then because like you also have a ton of payoffs in this specific version because of all your 0 mana artifacts, because you have EE, which we'll talk about in a second. You have Mox Amber, which a lot of turbo decks don't have, and like that's just a lot of zeros for your Grinding Station to go off, on top of the fact that you can use Soul Ring, Mana Vault, Grim Monolith. Like it's just so many cards that make it work exactly how you want it to. So it feels very smart here. So speaking of EE, do you want to talk about that? Obviously, super good with Lurrus, right?
EE is a card that I got the idea from Phoenix from, and also seeing it in Modern, seeing it in like other formats too.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's like one of those cards. It's like it's a board wipe that you got to pay a certain amount of mana for, but like you're in a high color list, you're always going to be able to hit any type of Sunburst, regardless of like, because like Lurrus doesn't. It just matters on like what you're able to like play in your list.
Right.
Like casting it for like a certain amount does not affect it.
Yep.
So like you, and then like also it can just like hit like so many different like random permanents that you just wouldn't be able to like hit. And it's like a Psychonic Rift, but like except for it doesn't bounce, it just kills them outright.
Right.
But when you are bringing it back with Lurrus, you have to be at 2 or less.
Right. So the first time around, you can play it for whatever, but when you're casting it out of the graveyard with Lurrus, 2 is the maximum amount of colors that it could be.
Correct.
Yeah, that's important to note for anyone picking up the list.
And also, there's like some like you will like deal with like some random cards and permanents that stops certain colors.
Yeah.
And so like it being a artifact,
like stuff with protection. Yeah.
Yeah, like you're able to be like, no.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other spicy one, Soul Guide Lantern, which I think is super cool because you clearly care about your graveyard. And this card's really awesome with that. But on top of all the fact that it's a repeatable graveyard nuke, like this is a card that with Lurrus in the grind game, like it seems really good.
Draws cards, nuke some graveyards.
Yeah, for sure.
And also, like I said, well-timed graveyard hate against like Breach and Breach, Hermit Druid, and Razaketh, you can actually stop very much so.
Yeah, dope. I also really one of my favorite packages you're playing here, which is the fact that you're on Grinding Station and Wishclaw, and it's always my favorite thing when you play an early Grinding Station and you're like, all right, I'll play my Wishclaw and go to tutor, and your opponent's like, who's gonna get it? And you're like, haha, fools, none of you.
It's beautiful.
It's so good. It's a great synergy. Then the enchantments, as I mentioned before, no Rhystic Study. There's only 3 of them, and then the other card that I am so like jazzed about you getting to play with Lurrus is Dress Down. That card is freaking awesome. Fun. It not only does it do its thing in this deck, but then it sacrifices itself at the end step. And if you don't get there, you're like, fine, I have Lurrus on my turn. Let's do this again. That's so good. It's such good synergy, and it's a cantrip, It's so stupid. I love Dress Down. That card's pushed as hell.
It is one of those cards that you just like wonder how it got through. What's it called?
Design,
R&D design, and it's just like, and it's only a 2-drop. It's like, geez, thanks guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's so good for our format. Yeah, if you're low, or if you're low on creatures this deck, and ignoring the fact that you have your 3 commanders, you only have 10 creatures in the main deck, right? And all of them can serve utility when you need them to, without having to be like none of them are, you need this to win the game. That's Zoracle, obviously a win con, but you can still breach off with a Dress Down in the battlefield, and Dress Down's a permanent, so you can always just like bounce it back to your hand when you have your entire graveyard in your library, right? Like, or your graveyard able to be cast.
Library in the graveyard.
Yes, thank you. So like, it's just so good, man. It's so good.
It's fantastic, and I'm happy that I actually decided to put the card in my list, because for like the longest time it actually wasn't. But then like a bunch of Winota players and Kenrith Druid players, and just all these weird
creature
stacks,
decks,
all these weird creature stacks that just came out of nowhere. And I'm like, what? Where did you guys come here?
Yeah, exactly. You're like, I love that you want to be here with your creatures, but what if instead they were things without abilities? Sorry.
It's like I like you guys. You guys are cool, and I appreciate that you guys are trying to bring creatures to the forefront.
I respect what you got going on here, but
this is I like to dub cEDH as vintage light. This is vintage. Please go away. I used to play vintage, so I can actually
in my head commit like cEDH is like to any D&D folks out there, like there's a sorcerer, and that's what like vintage is, and then there's like a wild magic sorcerer, and that's what cEDH is, because it's the same power level, but one of them is 400 cards multiplayer with all of that variance, right? Like it's just, and also like people's identity tied into these things, and it's just like it's crazy wild magic, right? Like it's insane. I love this format.
Me too. I'm glad I actually stumbled across this format 7 years ago.
Yeah, for sure. Wow, it's insane that you've been playing so much longer than I have.
Been playing since 2002.
Sweet. So that's it. The only other thing I've noticed is like the lands, you're at 27, which like some people would say is low. However, you're on a healthy amount of artifacts, and despite having like PETA and some wheels, your curve is super low. What is it? Moxfield says here 1.21.
Yeah,
it's pretty tight. That includes the fact that you're on like a good amount of 3-drops. So like the fact that you're 1.21 with that many 3-drops in like the instants and sorceries is pretty insane.
The amount of ad nauseums that I've gone through, the amount of cards I've drawn off ad nauseum after is just like insane. Like for how much life I've paid. I don't know how I survived a lot of those ad nauseums.
I literally was sitting here looking at the list, and I was like, are there any cards I think that might be missing? And I was going to ask you about Simian Spirit Guide, because I don't think of it as a permanent. But turns out it is a permanent.
It's a 3-drop.
It's a 3-drop permanent, and that's not how Lurrus works.
Imagine if it wasn't a it was not a 3-drop. It was like a 2-drop.
So
I would be snap playing that card so hard in this deck.
For sure. But man, this is such a cool list, and I'm really glad you brought it on. And like, it's one of those things where like I get how people ask you like, why should you play Tip of Craw? But it's unique. It does a thing that's different than that. It attacks on a different axis. It performs differently. It's got the same stupidly powerful stuff in it, right? Like, you're still playing Thoracle Consult. You're still playing Breach. You're still playing all of these colors that are super push. You're still playing Dockside and reanimation synergies with Dockside and all these wheels and all these super powerful effects, but you're just tackling it a different way, and you have a different version of a grind plan, right?
Yeah, and there's only like 3 cards different from like a normal blue farm list that I would be playing if I was. That's Ranger Captain of EO, Spellseeker, and Necropollen, sometimes even Study.
Yeah.
Like, those are the only like cards that you will actually... Oh, yeah, Seeming Spirit Guide, but...
Right.
You don't really,
but like, that's not a lot. That's not a lot. When people see Lurrus, they're like, oh, it's such a big restriction. And I think the biggest restriction is that, like, you have to play Will and Lucas, right? Like, that's the real restriction of the deck. Yeah.
If I could get away without playing Will and Lucas, I would.
Yeah, and as we mentioned earlier, there definitely are versions of this list that are playing the Isochron lines. So, like, if you want to take this list and work on those,
and also like heavy on reanimate. Well, not really reanimate, but like Goblin Welder, Goblin Engineer.
Right,
like,
right. That cute stuff. Yeah. For sure.
I'm like, that was in the initial list. I was like, you guys are this like.
Yeah, it stinks because you can't play Citadel though, right? Like,
if I could play Citadel, I would.
Yeah, fair.
I actually love that card so much, dude. Like, ad nauseam.
The co-author of the Icrom Citadel list. Wait, you like Citadel? That's so weird, huh? Weird.
No, I'm the other guy that plays randomly plays the list. Nobody knows who I am. I'm just the other guy.
Oh man,
that is my claim. My claim to fame is hopefully going to be this list, and I'm hoping that it gets voted onto the DDB.
Yeah, hell yeah, man.
Because I already have this list on the budget brews, so if I could get it on the DDB too, I'll pat myself on the back and I'll be like, all right, let's actually win some tournaments now.
And, worst case scenario, it doesn't. I get to just change the thumbnail for this episode to another best decks not in the DDB episode. Oh, man. Well, this wraps up this episode. Thank you so much, Dragoon, for not only being a supporter of this channel, but for bringing on a pretty cool list. If people have questions for you about this deck, I assume they can find you in the Comedian MTG Discord because you are one of the homies there all the time. Any other places you want people to reach out to you? Comedian MTG Discord, Twitter @Dragoon. I think my username is. I won't give you my Twitter handle at the end of this. And also, I'm in the Playing with Power Discord, but you guys got to be Patreons for that. And I'm also in the Turbonaut's Discord as well. Yeah, a lot. Sweet, man. Thank you so much for coming on. This has been awesome. Thank you for having me. Yeah, for the second time. It's second time within a year. Yeah, right. Basically a regular at this point, right? But hell yeah. So this has been super fun. A super cool list. If you want to once again see those decks, not only this version of the list that I have in front of us right now, but the budget 1,750. Those will all be in the description down below. If you want to talk about Dragoon, you want to talk and go to the Discord where this deck was founded, the other version of this deck was founded, where some of the brewing of Grolnok has been done, where Icrom Citadel was founded. Check out the Comedian MTG Discord. The free channels are where all the deck brews happen, and there's also patron-specific channels if you want to check those out. If you want to get a deck tech on the channel, you can also sign up to Patreon at patreon.com/comedianmtg. Thank everyone so much for watching. Remember to hit like and subscribe. And also turn on those notification bells for the next video. Hey, thanks, bud. Got a plug. All right, everybody. Have an amazing week. I'll see you next time. Stay safe out here. Have a nice one. Peace.